love yourself enough to allow somebody else to love you is a special thing. And because ultimately nobody else can fill that hole you're feeling.
Yeah.
And that's what leads to a lot of dysfunction in relationships. It's what leads to a lot of struggles. But that resonates so strongly because I think we've all said that, I'm not good enough. And it comes down to these beliefs. It's a fundamental belief of I'm not really lovable. Somewhere in there.
Yeah, totally. I think too, there is something in this. We've talked a lot on the podcast about masking and this idea of the mask and what that means. And I think one thing that's really coming up for me right now too is I believe so strongly in my mask being deeply lovable. The Reese that has been curated for public consumption is wonderful, great, fabulous. And so there is this like side kind of underneath of like, well, just don't, you don't gotta take off the mask. And any time in any relationship that I kind of began to, or the mask slipped a little bit on accident or whatever, or there's a moment of vulnerability, that was always the kind of root of the biggest like discord. Not even that it would cause fights. I've never fought in a relationship actually, which I think is an interesting thing.
And so it's a little telling. It's telling, yeah. And I get that. Yeah, I get that.
It's a self-report on me for sure. But so it's like it wouldn't even cause fights, but it would just be like, okay, now we're at this impasse where it's like we have a baseline misunderstanding and there's nothing to do but for me to go, well, but that's okay, and move forward, right? Like that's kind of what ends up happening. I think that was the thing that was the most difficult in that first experience of like losing a romantic love, like having opened up to try and be the recipient of, but then also losing romantic love was like, oh, it actually doesn't hurt any less when someone rejects the mask of you too. That is still deeply hurtful because it's like, and it still wasn't enough. And it still would not have changed anything. But it made it really hard for him to be himself around me too, right?
Right, because if you think somebody else is perfect, you have to try to be perfect too.
Oh yeah.
If you have that, I'm curious though. What's it like to share this? Like, what comes up for you as you revisit this? Probably 7-8-year-old memory. I'm guessing in some senses, give or take.
Yeah.
What comes up for you?
It does feel very much like, wow, I kind of sold myself up the river in a lot of ways in not showing up fully and authentically. I had built around myself as like this kind of like protective bubble and mask that it did feel very much like, and it didn't even work. Like such a self-betrayal. That was kind of like, you did all of this and for what?
Wow. I can feel it. I can feel the emotions there in that. And thank you for sharing it with me and being brave enough to share it with the audience as well. Just that betrayal is such a strong word. I notice this betrayal of self, and what I hear, what comes up for me is that those parts of you that felt the need to mask to do this were doing so out of such love and concern for you, but because there's some part of you that's afraid of, if I was who I really was, then I'm unlovable, or
right.
This wouldn't work. And especially if, and then you have the added pressure of, you're so perfect. Oh, you're Reese, you're so perfect. You're up here. And so now there's this polarization between, well, now I have to be perfect. Like you put all this pressure on me to be perfect, and I'm not perfect because none of us are. And all of us are. Like it's that duality of we are perfect. I love you, you're perfect, now change. Right? There's
Yeah.
that I think there's that I think it's a play. I'm not I remember when I was in high school in debate, I feel like that was one of the very popular OI pieces or humorous interpretation pieces that people would do. And yeah, I think it's that first love is so deep. And yet I wonder how it's informed future relationships for you. Any thoughts on that? Like how has that, like, you said you were triggered by if somebody calls me perfect. How have you how has that manifested, I guess, throughout, since then
Yeah.
in your relationships in general, not even necessarily romantic, but
Right. I think perfection is something that very much, I think all women, most people, but specifically women, really struggle with, because there is this, I think there's a broader conclusion to be kind of drawn that is very much kind of what society asks for of women, rising to meet that and then being smashed down anyways, right? That is like society says you have to check these boxes. You have to meet these standards. You have to be the best mother. You have to be a mother. You have to be a good mother. You have to be a wife. You have to be good at cooking. You have to be good at cleaning. You have to manage the household. And even the women and wives in wonderful relationships, there are still lots of reports and studies around the unseen burden and the power imbalance within just like the emotional maintenance of a family unit that women still carry, just because of this kind of baseline society that we live in. You also, now you can't want to throw away a career because of being a mother, but also you can't only want a career. You should want both, and you have to do both beautifully and masterfully. And if you choose to do something different than other women, you cannot say that you are judging women who do something different. You have to be ultimately supportive of all women, even women that you really disagree with. Like, there are all of these impossibilities that are thrusted upon women. And man, are women good at balancing those and tackling those, until there is something that understandably is impossible, and society finds this one little chip, this one little crack, and you're a bad mother. You're a bad career person. You're a bad daughter. You're a bad sister. You're like, and then it becomes a deeply personal thing. Like, because you can't do these performative actions, you inherently are bad, is very much the message that is sent. And so I think that that was largely my experience. That's like, I want this idealized, almost like Madonna-esque girl. And then as soon as there is something that is like, oh, but you're not actually who I thought, like there's an inconsistency here. Yeah, we gotta like peace out, and you're still thrown away. But the narrative that exists within all of this is that that is judging the self based on external perception, on someone else's standard of what it means to be good or a good woman, not your own standard. And I think that that really is the challenge of feminism now, today, is bringing that focus inward. I think that that is the challenge now, is prying away the definition of good womanhood from other people's hands and bringing it back to our own hearts, to our own souls, and saying, no, this is mine to define, because it is my role. It is my identity. And even though that identity is something that shapes the way others perceive me, it is not theirs to put parameters around. And I think in terms of it impacting future relationships for me, I am a straight woman, so they have all been with men. Just for context in what we're discussing, I think that's important to note. Because I do think a relationship between two women or a woman and a non-binary person would be different in this power dynamic. I think that all of my boyfriends, I don't want to say partner because I think that carries a different heft. All of my boyfriends have viewed me as a piece of their life that I am checking one of their boxes, not that
Ooh,
I
wow.
am something independent that is there to be partnered with, right? And I don't want to blame these men. That I have always been treated extremely respectfully and have always felt very loved and safe in any of my relationships. So I truly still hold nothing but love for these men. I think that that is a societal thing that young men are taught, that whether you fight against it or not, a woman is a thing that a man gets and you kind of need to serve this one specific function, facet in your life. And anything that she wants to do or that is her passion is kind of incidental to that.
Mm.
As long as you also have all of these other things that serve whatever is in this box for you, you're good. And again, I don't think it's their fault. I think it is how young men are taught that it's like, well, if you're going to take on the world, you need a woman, one, to bear and raise children, but to also like manage the house and all of these other things. And perhaps you want a woman who is driven, who is career oriented, so that you can also kind of have that to be proud of on your arm at business dinners or whatever. But I think oftentimes that is still looked at as her drive makes me look good, not, wow, she has drive.
Wow, that you said a lot,
Yeah, I
and
did. I'm sorry. I've been
I want
kind
to
of.
don't stop, Reese. Don't you dare apologize because everything you said is absolutely incredible and worth like 5 re-listens because everything you said is absolutely true. I think wow, so I have to organize my thoughts here. You hit my ADHD brain. I'm bouncing all over the place. It's awesome. I think the first thing that comes up for me is, men need to do better. I mean, that literally was the first, like you make excuses for us and yes, there are a lot of reasons why this, it is embedded in our patriarchal society. But there are men who don't feel that way, who actually do, and so it's not something that you can't just, in my opinion, toss it off to if for men listening to say, oh well, this is just the way I am, this is the way society made me, because there are men who don't feel don't see their partner, their spouse, their significant other in that way as the word that came is an accessory. That's sort
Yes.
of is the image I got, like a nice pair, a nice set of cufflinks, and so I don't want to give men a pass on that, because you have to do better. I mean that we have to do better. And I think it really also struck for me, the myth of Lilith and Adam, right? In this sense of I mean that's what really popped up for me, the mythology there, right? In terms of I mean, according to Jewish mythology, right, Lilith and Adam were created out of the same substance, in Genesis 1. And again, this is not biblical exactly. It's certainly extra biblical in the sense of it came from legends and myths, in the common era, probably after a lot of
More
this,
Gnostic traditions.
more Gnostic traditions. But at the same time, this archetype has been around for far longer than the Bible's been around, and before the Bible existed in any way, shape, or form. So but this idea of, I want you to be beneath me. And Lilith is like, no, we're equals. And notice she wasn't trying for domination. There wasn't, I'm better than you, I should be. It was, no, we're equals. We're co-creators. And Adam couldn't handle that. And then he went and whined to God, like, hey, bring her back, because, but she refused to come back and was cursed for it, right? And I mean, that tells us really all we need to know in some senses, because that myth is we see it in our reality.
Yeah.
Every single day. That just really, that struck me there. And I think this idea of perfection is so damaging to women, and in particular, and I think it's damaging to men too, actually, because I think, it's talked about less perhaps, but I think it's still there. And comes out probably in various ways, but for women to have to be perfect. If I'm not perfect, then I'm bad. And
Right.
if I can't afford to have one mistake, I can't let the mask slip, as you said. And then I'm damned if I do, because if the mask makes, the mask doesn't work either. And so what am I supposed to do? How am I supposed to, and
Yeah.
to me the answer is just be. Is be. And it goes to, and I'm also reminded of one of the when we were doing in the last episode of these meditations, that of leaning into being misunderstood, welcoming being misunderstood, because the right people will hear and I'm paraphrasing, but I seek being misunderstood because I know the right people will hear my truth that's for them. And so I feel that maybe that's what love is in some senses, is
Yeah.
to feel that you don't have to change. You don't have to, you are perfect just the way you are, imperfect as you are, because your imperfection is perfection. Because wouldn't it be boring if we were all perfect? I
Right.
mean, honestly, like I don't know, the most fun people are the ones who are imperfect. Like, I don't want to be around perfect people, because I can't live up to that. I know I can't live up to that standard. I don't want to live
Yeah.
up to that standard.